So, welcome to our webinar, Football for the People, Not the Rich, Exposing the World Cup's Climate and Social Injustice. This is a bilingual webinar in English and Spanish. Apologies for participants joining us in the stream and watching this later. The interpretation is not recorded. Este es un webinario bilingüe en inglés y español. Lo siento por los participantes que se unan a la transmisión o lo vean más tarde. La interpretación no se graba. I'm Mira Kapfinger, co-founder and coordinator of Stay Grounded, and I have the pleasure to welcome you here and facilitate this webinar together with Ángel Sulub, the coordinator of Permancer en la Tierra, Stay Grounded Latin America and Caribbean. So Stay Grounded is an international network of more than 330 member organizations campaigning for the just reduction of aviation and its impacts on communities across the globe. And we are here today because the World Cup has become more than football. It has become a tournament of inequality, or a World Cup of dispossession, with the only winners being the super rich private jet class. And across the globe, people are actually coming together to denounce this spectacle and stand up against its impacts. So next slide, please. In the next 1.5 hours, we will get first an introduction by Ángel Sulub to give a bit more context on the webinar, and then hear from our 3 amazing speakers that I'm very happy to welcome here, and we'll introduce them to you later in more detail. But we will hear from Natalia Lara from the Asamblea Antimundialista, from Frank Huisingh from Fossil Free Football, and Chuck Collins from the Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome today, and thanks for joining. And then after hearing from all those 3 speakers, we will have some time for discussion and questions before closing off. So I hand on to you, Ángel, for some more context and introduction.
Bienvenidos de nuevo. Yo soy Ángel Sulub de la red Permancer en la Tierra de Latinoamérica y el Caribe. Y hablar del Mundial de la FIFA es indiscutiblemente hablar del evento deportivo de mayor alcance en el planeta. Cada 4 años el mundo se paraliza ante una narrativa de fiesta, de orgullo nacional y de hermandad global. Sin embargo, detrás de las luces de los estadios, detrás del césped perfecto y la derrama económica prometida, opera una maquinaria corporativa con profundas implicaciones estructurales que rara vez ocupan los titulares de la prensa deportiva. Este webinario nace de la urgencia de mirar más allá del balón. Nos convoca la necesidad de analizar el Mundial no como un hecho aislado de entretenimiento, sino como un fenómeno político, económico y social que se implanta directamente sobre las realidades y sobre las heridas de los países anfitriones. En el caso de México, esta fiesta coexiste con un contexto crítico que no podemos ni debemos ignorar. A lo largo de esta sesión analizaremos distintas dimensiones de este impacto a través de la mirada de las personas quienes nos van a acompañar con su testimonio. Frente a una emergencia ambiental global, la huella de carbono de este torneo es masiva, impulsada por el uso desmedido de la aviación privada y comercial. Asimismo, la infraestructura mundialista agudiza problemáticas locales críticas como el estrés hídrico y el despojo del agua en comunidades que ya sufren por el desabasto. Vamos a escuchar cómo las ciudades sede sufren transformaciones drásticas que desplazan a sus propios habitantes, desde la turistificación y el encarecimiento de la vivienda a través de las plataformas digitales, hasta las dinámicas de limpieza social que criminalizan el comercio informal y marginan a los sectores más vulnerables, para proyectar una imagen urbana higienizada y amigable para el capital extranjero. Es innegable la contradicción humanitaria, hay una negligencia y una prioridad corporativa. Quizás el contraste más doloroso de esta edición del Mundial es el espejo en el que se mira nuestro país, México, mientras se atraviesa una crisis humanitaria histórica con más de 130,000 personas desaparecidas y familias que buscan justicia con sus propios recursos ante la indolencia del Estado. El gobierno demuestra una capacidad institucional y financiera extraordinaria para garantizar los intereses, la seguridad y las exenciones fiscales de las élites de la FIFA y sus patrocinadores. El objetivo de este encuentro, como decía Mira, no es solo debatir sobre, no es debatir sobre el deporte en sí, sino desmantelar el modelo extractivista de los grandes eventos globales. Les invitamos a escuchar a nuestras panelistas, a cuestionar las verdaderas prioridades de los gobiernos y las corporaciones y a reflexionar y accionar juntos y preguntarnos a costa de quiénes se celebra esta Copa del Mundo. Quiero dar la bienvenida a nuestra primera panelista, ella es Natalia Lara, del pueblo de Santa Úrsula, Cuapa, en la Ciudad de México, y pues que nos va a compartir la experiencia que han vivido de organización desde antes del evento mundialista y todo lo que han realizado hasta el día de hoy para enfrentar este evento que afecta directamente a su comunidad. Adelante, Natalia.
Sí, muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad de platicar con ustedes y conocer el contexto de lo que está sucediendo en la Ciudad de México. Santa Úrsula Cuapa es donde se encuentra el Estadio Ciudad de México. Antes Estadio Azteca, hoy Estadio Banorte y bueno, ante la FIFA Estadio Ciudad de México. Este estadio va norte porque justo lo que nosotros analizamos como parte, digamos, de la organización que conformamos en torno a la defensa del territorio aquí en la Ciudad de México, es que hay un ingreso del capital muy importante y entonces ahora pues se transforma todo esto en una mercancía, en una forma en cómo hay una publicidad en torno al tema del mundial. El mundial pues es un evento digamos, con una fachada deportiva, pero que de fondo esconde pues toda esta parte de mercantilización del territorio. Y un poco, pues lo que quería platicar con ustedes y ver de qué manera pues se van
Nati,
desarrollando estas. Ujú.
lo siento mucho. Pues
Ah,
hablar un poco más despacio por los
claro,
intérpretes,
claro.
gracias.
Sí, generalmente hablo muy rápido. Pues un poco también lo que platicábamos entre diferentes organizaciones es el tema de la dimensión social de lo que hemos vivido en torno al tema del mundial. Por un lado, por ejemplo, el tema del ordenamiento territorial para nosotros es muy significativo, porque lo que sucedió en la Ciudad de México para llevar a cabo aquí el Mundial significó generar toda una infraestructura pública con dinero público para que pocas empresas se beneficiaran de todo lo que significaba transformar la ciudad y el ordenamiento territorial. Televisa es la empresa dueña del Estadio Azteca y que actualmente comparte con otras empresas, digamos, el funcionamiento del estadio, pero para poder llevar a cabo la remodelación y finalmente llevar a cabo aquí el partido, pues tanto inaugural como los otros partidos que han sucedido acá en Ciudad de México, se tuvo que generar primero una concesión de agua, es decir, una privatización del agua en el pueblo de Santa Úrsula Cuapa para que pudiera funcionar todo, digamos, en torno a los restaurantes, a las actividades hospitalarias, al tema, por ejemplo, de la turistificación, pues quitaron el agua como un bien público y se privatiza. Desde ahí vemos nosotros pues esta tendencia de despojar a los pueblos para llevar a cabo este efecto del mundial. Entonces, por eso le decíamos mundial del despojo, que es un poco las imágenes que Ángel nos presentó hace un momento, en donde se ve justo esta tendencia que nosotros vemos como habitantes de la ciudad, a que es un mundial que nos ha despojado del agua, de la tierra, del espacio público y pues de la vida. Y eso es lo que estuvimos viviendo en estos meses. De hecho, en los meses del Mundial no teníamos agua. También, digamos, como un control interesante del territorio de que el agua a las colonias aledañas al Estadio Azteca llegaba a través de estos carros tanque, no llegaba, digamos, como en esta forma de distribución pública por medio de la red, sino que tenía que extraerse de otros lados, transportarse y llevarse justo hacia alguna casa. Esto implica pues una logística bastante amplia y también implica pues que se mueve el agua por estos carros que son bastante contaminantes, ¿no? Sobre todo para la atmósfera, y ya sumando al tema de que es el mundial más contaminante, pues este fue otra forma también de que el aire o la calidad del aire en la Ciudad de México pues se viera bastante afectada por el tema de la escasez de agua. Pero también lo que nos llama la atención es cómo el gobierno de la Ciudad de México generó un uso o un ordenamiento diferente de la ciudad, en el sentido en que ya no estamos habitando zonas que sean pensadas para, digamos, casas unifamiliares, sino que son pensadas para centros comerciales. Entonces tenemos un uso de suelo que significa que es comercial. Esto quiere decir que pues está pendiente de la especulación inmobiliaria para generar no solo, digamos, como desarrollos de vivienda de lujo, sino también está pensada para que se puedan generar ahí otro tipo de comercios, como centros comerciales, como espacios, por ejemplo, de oficinas, como espacios también de hoteles y diferentes dinámicas del mercado inmobiliario que finalmente terminan desplazando a la población originaria y que dan pie a esta inversión o reinversión de los altos capitales. Y ese es un temor latente que tenemos actualmente en la Ciudad de México. Nuestra ciudad, después del Mundial, lo vamos a ver justo con este ordenamiento territorial, pensada precisamente para la reinversión financiera. No está pensada para las personas que habitamos, sino está pensada para las personas que pueden consumir y pagar altos costos de vida dentro de este territorio. Y así es un poco
Perdón,
cómo estamos
Nati,
viendo el
solamente,
desplazamiento.
solamente para pedirte que hablas un poquito más despacio porque creo que se
Todavía,
me hace súper
ok,
difícil para los intérpretes.
está
Adelante.
perfecto. No, una disculpa.
Perdón.
Este, trato entonces sí de hablar más despacio. Em, Justo lo que veíamos en este concepto para nosotros de este fenómeno, varios colectivos lo hemos llamado como ciudad mercancía. Em, la ciudad mercancía para nosotros es una forma en la que entendemos el territorio, en donde se está pensando que la ciudad es un modelo de negocio, no es, digamos, una ciudad para habitar, sino es una forma en cómo los capitales pueden invertir y entonces cómo pueden generar estos capitales, pues mayor ingresos económicos. Pero nosotros como habitantes que no tenemos el capital para invertir, entonces nos vemos desplazados. Por eso decimos que nosotros somos consumidores o nos piensan como consumidores, no como personas que habitamos el territorio. Y esto sale muy a colación o sale, digamos, a magnificarse durante el tema del mundial. El mundial para nosotros fue la punta de lanza precisa para que de esa manera pues viéramos cómo se reorganiza el territorio con la mano del gobierno para entonces sí generar pues una inversión financiera que fuera rentable para empresas como Televisa, que son las dueñas del Estadio Azteca, Estadio Ciudad de México, como lo es Coca-Cola, como lo es, por ejemplo, pues algunas marcas pues de cerveza, ¿no? Algunas marcas patrocinadoras del Mundial son las que generan pues esta riqueza y nosotros en el territorio pues realmente lo que vemos es este despojo. Para llevar a cabo todo este ordenamiento se invirtió muchísima infraestructura pública porque se tomó finalmente como si fuera un activo financiero de las mismas empresas. Se hizo, por ejemplo, en la Ciudad de México, que ahora es verano, llueve muchísimo, entonces se hizo una infraestructura para el drenaje bastante amplia y fue muy curioso que se generaron, digamos, como tinas grandes para que se evitaran inundaciones, pero no en las partes donde se inunda la ciudad, sino en las partes cercanas al estadio, que terminaron siendo parte, digamos, como de una especie de vinculación con el turismo. Hicieron, por ejemplo, algo que se llama jardín de lluvia para dar este maquillaje de una ciudad verde y ese jardín de lluvia terminó siendo más que nada un spot para el turismo en donde llegan las personas y se toman su selfie al lado del Estadio Azteca. Pero ese jardín de lluvia es totalmente inservible y en este cambio climático que ha habido todavía lluvias más intensas, pues no ha servido absolutamente de nada la infraestructura pública de drenaje. Simplemente ha servido para que el pasto o el césped del estadio no se inunde en el tema cuando había partidos. Y hubo grandes lluvias en los últimos dos partidos en Ciudad de México, pero esta infraestructura pública sirvió para que no se retrasaran tanto estos, digamos, partidos entre el de Ecuador y el último con Inglaterra. Entonces vemos cómo la infraestructura pública del gobierno sirve a los capitales, no a las personas. Hubo remodelaciones muy interesantes en el metro centro de la ciudad, que fueron remodelaciones netamente estéticas. Se gastaron muchísimo dinero en mejorar las paredes, pusieron candelabros que no tienen nada que ver, digamos, con la dinámica que usamos las personas en transporte público, pusieron hasta jardines verticales dentro de un metro subterráneo, que obviamente las plantas están muriendo en este momento porque se piensan como ornato. Y finalmente lo que sucede es que pues en este ornato pues no vemos que haya una funcionalidad en tema de transporte, pues que haya un mejores trenes, que haya pues digamos una mejor calidad en el servicio. Simplemente fue una visión estética de la ciudad para permitir la turistificación. Y eso es lo que hemos visto en este tema de cómo estamos pues llevando este ordenamiento territorial dentro de la Ciudad de México. Esta ciudad mercancía que sirve para la turistificación, para la gentrificación, pero no para atender las necesidades de las personas. Y en ese sentido, pues desde diferentes colectivos aquí en Ciudad de México y desde la Asamblea Antimundialista, pues lo que nosotros hemos hecho es ocupar el espacio público con una demanda muy concreta, que es que tiene que ver que la ciudad sea para quienes la habitamos, no para los altos capitales que vienen a invertir. Entonces, desde noviembre de 2025, en Ciudad de México, si alguien conoce el Estadio Azteca, hay un puente vehicular, ¿no? Un puente que, dicho sea de paso, cuando se construye el Estadio Azteca, divide al pueblo de Santa Úrsula en varias partes. Y ahora las calzadas más importantes o las avenidas más importantes de la ciudad, que son Calzada de Tlalpan, Insurgentes y Periférico, que rodean al Estadio Azteca, fueron las que dividieron la propiedad colectiva del pueblo de Santa Úrsula Cuapa. Entonces tenemos diferentes parcelas y se hizo una propiedad privada que termina quitando todo ese ordenamiento comunitario. Pero pues hay algunas personas que somos necias, como yo, que buscamos que haya una propiedad colectiva, pero ahora del espacio público. Esas calles diseñadas para los autos las queremos retomar nosotros para las actividades que tenemos en torno a cómo vamos a defender el territorio frente a lo que significa el mundial y la ciudad mercancía. Esta ciudad que está pensada solo para invertir, una ciudad que piensa que las calles, el agua y el territorio son activos financieros necesarios para la especulación, pero nosotros decimos que hay que retomarlo y que eso se tiene que adaptar a nuestras formas de vida. En ese sentido, pues desde noviembre de 2025 hemos hecho asambleas constantemente en este puente vehicular que nos da ahí una especie de sombra. Y ahí hemos ocupado ese espacio haciendo asambleas, pero también haciendo una contranarrativa gráfica que ha sido algo muy importante para nosotros, porque en la Ciudad de México hemos visto cómo el gobierno, coludido con las empresas, evitan que haya mensajes en contra del Mundial o en contra de la FIFA. Están invisibilizando cualquier demanda que tenga que ver justo con que no sea una fiesta mundialista. Y se vio muy específicamente en el tema de familias buscadoras, que son estas demandas históricas que tenemos acá en México, donde se dice, pues, ¿por qué tiene que haber un mundial aquí cuando precisamente hay más de 130,000 desaparecidos y que hay familias buscándolos en diferentes lugares de la República? Ahí vimos, pues, prácticamente cómo se intentó silenciar esta parte de la lucha, pero también se viene silenciando la parte de defensa del territorio desde hace, pues, bastantes meses. Nosotros, como habitantes de Santa Úrsula Cuapa, pues decidíamos que lo más importante era evidenciar cómo se nos había quitado el agua, cómo se había privatizado para este mundial. Entonces, pues un poco lo que marcábamos en esta narrativa era precisamente pues que nos devolvieran el agua que nos habían quitado. Algo que seguimos en demanda porque todavía el gobierno no ha atendido esa agenda que traemos desde la sociedad civil, pero pues que de alguna manera en la contranarrativa pues se estuvo analizando, se estuvo exponiendo y se estuvo viendo de diferentes formas. Nuestro, digamos, como primera intervención gráfica con un artista que se llama Bloque Negro fue pues hacer un brandalismo, ¿no? De hacer pues una intervención gráfica en una publicidad de Coca-Cola, en donde decíamos no existe juego limpio en tierra despojada, con un anuncio muy claro de que veíamos que era el Mundial del Despojo. Ese mural o esa intervención duró menos de 24 horas, fue borrada por el gobierno y en ese sentido, pues también nosotros decidimos que queríamos regresar a ese espacio porque precisamente nos estaban borrando esa forma o esa acción, digamos, de denuncia a lo que estaba sucediendo. Ese espacio del Bajo Puente, por ejemplo, es una reminiscencia del territorio originario del pueblo de Santa Úrsula Cuapa que fue despojado y no sabemos ya si está contemplado precisamente el despojo por parte de Televisa o por parte mismo del gobierno de la Ciudad de México. Han sido espacios que nos han atrincherado y que sin hacer, digamos, cumplir las leyes internacionales como el Acuerdo 169 de la OIT, pues se han apropiado de los territorios de esa manera, por lo menos aquí en Ciudad de México. Y a raíz de eso empezamos a ver pues esta tendencia en cómo podemos denunciar desde la gráfica, desde lo visual, estas contranarrativas en torno al mundial, de que bien existe un evento deportivo, pero que termina siendo sumamente elitista. Y así empezaron a llegar varias personas que tenían diferentes problemas en torno a cómo se habita en la ciudad. Una alza de rentas impresionante. Y esto, por ejemplo, hace poco hablábamos con algunos profesores de nivel secundaria que decían que veían cómo estaban yéndose los estudiantes porque ya no alcanza para las rentas en la zona. La especulación inmobiliaria ha subido tanto la renta que pues entonces las personas ya no tienen los ingresos suficientes para permanecer ahí en el territorio. Y esa es una de las consecuencias de ser la tercera sede o la primera ciudad con 3 veces mundialista, ¿no? Entonces, esa es, digamos, un poco la especulación y cómo el gobierno se ha relacionado precisamente para pues estar ahí pendiente justo de cómo podían ellos magnificar esta parte de la especulación inmobiliaria, contemplando que el territorio y el agua son mercancías, no son para la vida. Ellos sacan dinero también a través de los impuestos, especular, digamos, el valor del suelo les sirve también al gobierno para tener más recaudación. Entonces, ahí vemos una tendencia de abandono total hacia las colonias populares. Y pues empezamos a hacer estas ocupaciones gráficas, que así le llamamos, en el Bajo Puente, y empezaron a llegar diferentes personas de otras partes de la ciudad, desde el centro histórico, donde veíamos una mayor cantidad de desalojos que estaba justamente siendo turistificado para el Mundial. Vimos digamos, un despojo, un desalojo de todo el comercio. Aquí en Ciudad de México tenemos una dinámica de comercio en las calles que se llama tianguis, y todos estos tianguis son productores locales prácticamente que vienen a vender pues fruta, verdura, últimamente venden pues algunos electrodomésticos o ropa, pero estos tianguis ocupan en la calle para poder vender. Eso se quitaron durante el Mundial y no sabemos si van a poder continuar. Y sobre digamos el Estadio Azteca, que había mucho comercio, se desapareció totalmente. Fueron quitados como en una forma de remoción para nosotros pues estética, una forma de limpieza social para que el extranjero turista no viera precisamente como estas acciones de venta, que se veía un poco como en esta especie de confrontación con las que sí podían vender durante el mundial, ¿no? Con estas marcas certificadas, no iban a permitir que pues el comercio local pudiera vender en esta zona. Entonces vimos esa reordenación y veíamos esa relación con los comerciantes, con gente del sur de la ciudad, en una pues digamos en Xochimilco, que es una parte muy turistificada de la ciudad, donde todavía tenemos chinampas, que es una forma agrícola pues prehispánica, y trajineras, que son canoas que pues trasladas a las personas en diferentes partes de Xochimilco. Ahí se hicieron pues acciones de turistificación bastante grandes que terminaron también desplazando las zonas chinamperas y sobre todo pensando que las zonas de las chinampas pues terminan siendo agua para drenaje. Entonces, también relacionarnos juntos con, pues digamos, con los pueblos del sur de la Ciudad de México para ver de qué manera deteníamos la turistificación. Y ahora que vemos que, pues durante 8 meses resistimos, pues generamos unas intervenciones interesantes en el espacio público que queremos retomar como una forma también de protesta para subir nuestras demandas dentro, digamos, del gobierno. Algo que analizábamos desde la Asamblea Antimundialista es que el gobierno no tomó en cuenta ninguna de las demandas que traíamos de peticiones desde hace años. Nosotros nos enteramos de la privatización del agua por Televisa en Santa Úrsula, Cuapa, en 2021. A la fecha, esa demanda de regresar el agua a Santa Úrsula ha sido, pues, digamos, deslegitimada, ha sido, pues, invisibilizada de alguna manera, y entonces seguimos con esa demanda pendiente. Ninguna de las demandas que teníamos, como por ejemplo regular las plataformas de Airbnb durante el Mundial, evitar los desalojos, evitar, digamos, que se quitaran los comercios locales, regresar el agua, tener, digamos, como una mayor posibilidad de un congelamiento de rentas durante el Mundial. Eso el gobierno prácticamente lo tiró a la basura. Pero lo que sí logramos fue un alcance organizativo bastante importante, que es lo que nos está dando fuerza para esta ciudad postmundial. A través de esta narrativa, pues, o contranarrativa gráfica que elaboramos hacia el mundial, logramos conglomerar varias demandas y también ocupamos el espacio público de una manera lúdica y desde el goce. Entonces empezamos a cerrar las calles como una forma de protesta, boicoteando un poco la experiencia turista. Evitamos que llegaran a tiempo algunas personas a los partidos dentro de la Ciudad de México, que para nosotros fue esa parte de incomodar al turista, pero lo hicimos no desde esta forma, digamos, como cerrar una calle con una lona, que es algo muy tradicional, sino jugando una reta, una, digamos, como fútbol en la calle, callejero del pueblo, en las avenidas principales, en Avenida Periférico, en Calzada de Tlalpan, en Avenida Imán, que son los principales accesos hacia el estadio. La forma nosotros de bloquear era jugando fútbol y hacíamos nuestras retas anti-FIFA, así le llamábamos. Y estas retas anti-FIFA lo que buscaban era justo cambiar la narrativa, decir, el fútbol no tiene que ser un fútbol para la élite, tiene que ser un fútbol del pueblo, de las personas que habitamos. Reapropiarnos, decíamos, ya nos quitaron la tierra, ya nos quitaron el agua, ya nos quitaron, pues digamos, hasta el mismo drenaje, pero entonces el fútbol no nos van a quitar. Eso sigue perteneciendo al territorio, al pueblo, y lo vamos a jugar bajo nuestras propias reglas. Y esa fue nuestra forma de defensa durante el Mundial. Estuvimos ahí resistiendo y para nosotros era muy interesante, la verdad, ver cómo las personas turistas que iban hacia el Estadio Azteca tenían que bajarse de sus autobuses, caminar y pasar por nosotros para ver nuestra protesta, porque no podían llegar a tiempo a través del coche. Tenían que bajarse y caminar. Esas mismas avenidas que despojaron en los años 60 al pueblo de Santa Úrsula su tierra colectiva, pues fueron las que bloqueamos ahora para que entonces pudieran ver nuestra protesta y nuestra resignificación del territorio. Y pues esa es un poco la dinámica que hemos visto. Ahora pensamos nosotros que tenemos una organización social bastante amplia que puede nuevamente volver a poner en la agenda pública todas estas necesidades que tenemos de rentas justas, de acceso a una vivienda asequible, de regresar el agua, pero ya digamos con una dinámica muchísimo más amplia organizativamente. Si bien en el ámbito de agenda pública política no se pudo llevar a cabo ningún avance de las demandas que traemos, sí pudimos generar una organización amplia que ahora nos permite reorganizarnos en el territorio. Y pensamos que es importante seguir en pie de esta agenda que traemos, porque la ciudad postmundial que estamos viendo es una ciudad de la gentrificación. Y para nosotros eso es muy importante de tener. No queremos que nuestra ciudad siga siendo una ciudad mercancía, queremos que sea territorios para la vida, antes precisamente que seguir pensando que nuestra calle, nuestra agua, nuestra casa sirven a un capital financiero. Eso debe estar basado en las necesidades de las personas y no de las élites corporativas.
Muchísimas gracias, Natalia, por compartirnos estas reflexiones sobre este Mundial del Despojo, sobre este modelo de negocios en el que la ciudad es una mercancía y las personas son vistas como consumidores y no como habitantes de la ciudad, por contarnos sobre esta resistencia a partir de una contranarrativa gráfica y la ocupación del espacio público y retomar el fútbol para la gente, el fútbol de la calle, el fútbol del barrio y con estas retas anti-FIFA. Muchas gracias y bueno, le dejo la palabra a Mira para presentar las siguientes intervenciones.
Thanks a lot. Yes, from the impacts the World Cup has on Mexico City and on the local communities, we will now zoom out towards an initiative that challenges the impacts that the World Cup has on our global climate. Football is under threat. Extreme heat, flooded pitches, polluting sponsors. We must protect our game before it's too late, says Fossil Free Football, a grassroots organization of football fans. And I'm very happy to welcome with us here Frank Huisingh, who is a founder of Fossil Free Football and full-time campaigner there. He is a supporter of Ajax, and Frank will inform us about the carbon footprint of the Global World Cup and football in general and their campaigns challenging the corporate sponsorship of FIFA. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here, and it's a pleasure to see so many of you from around the world. And I've been really impressed with the previous presentation. Maybe I take a much more outside view, so my stories are maybe much less interesting than the previous story, but a little bit on the role of flying in football. And it's a combination of a story about sponsorship, and also a story about ever bigger tournaments leading to more and more flying. So yeah, let me start by maybe shortly introducing myself. So I started, as you said, Fossil Free Football, and we're a campaign organization of football fans. We try to push FIFA and other football bodies to take serious climate action. You see these bodies talk about climate, especially a few years ago. The president of FIFA was raising a green card for the planet, but now you see them make all those polluting choices. The gentleman over here has become ever more famous. Last year, for the people outside the football world who didn't know him yet, he gave Donald Trump a peace prize because he has a very close political relationship to Donald Trump. Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, will argue that is in the service of the World Cup, but it's mainly also because he's attracted to the power of Donald Trump, and he's also attracted to the power of the fossil fuel industry and the money that the fossil fuel industry is willing to give to football. Is willing to give to football because they are under a lot of threat from people like us around the world who demand serious climate action, and from the fact that their competitors, solar power, wind power, batteries are much cheaper and better and cleaner, and they will lose, but they wanna of course lose as slow as they can. So when Donald Trump got a peace prize, we gave Gianni Infantino the very official football climate impact prize. And Gianni Infantino is now, of course, also famous for his private jet flying. It's a private jet he got from the Qatari, who organized the previous World Cup. So they have a sort of full-time loan situation now. And I'll try to speak slower. I realize I'm pretty fast. With FIFA, where Gianni Infantino can use his private jet unlimited. So I want to zoom in into two things. First, the fact that airline sponsors are everywhere in football. For this World Cup, we have a Saudi oil company, Aramco, which is relatively unique. We've seen a lot of fossil fuel companies in football, but they're not the dominant presence. Airline sponsors are much more dominant. And of course, I think I don't need to tell most of you here this, but being associated with football is totally in line with the strategy of airlines to present flying as cool and aspirational. Little kids want to be football stars. Now little kids and adults who haven't given up on their dreams, but now they also want to fly, because apparently that's what football stars do and sell you. On a more basic level, the world of football, both its FIFA and UEFA tournaments are constantly expanding. So that also leads to more and more emissions, and they're expanding in a way that necessitates more flying from fans and teams. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. So I went to Instagram today. You might recognize some Egyptian flags. That has to do with the screenshot from this match. I tried to screenshot the moment you see the Qatar Airways airplane flying in, and this is a Messi goal, where his shot is presented as a plane flying through the air. So "Let it fly" is the Qatar Airways slogan for this World Cup, and Qatar Airways advertising is very dominant around the pitch, and they've been a FIFA sponsor for a very long time. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is sort of best of competition of Gulf state airlines, and of course in the World Cup, American Airlines is also a sponsor. But in international football, you see it's especially the Gulf states that want to be visible with their airlines. So we see Emirates here, very active in football. Etihad, Qatar, and then Saudi also have their own airline that is a sponsor of Atletico Madrid. And from left to right, for the not so informed football fans, you see Arsenal, you see Manchester City, and you see Paris Saint-Germain, where maybe the three best clubs of the last few years, and they all have an airline now. They all have an airline sponsor. This was last year's final, which was a Qatar Airways only final, with Paris Saint-Germain playing Inter Milan. They were all sponsored by Qatar Airways. The tournament itself was sponsored by Qatar Airways. So yeah, they basically bought the entire competition for advertising reasons. And you see, politically, Qatar is also deep into football administration. The owner of Paris Saint-Germain is a Qatari government official who was always also very influential in European football. So this is a deeply embedded power relationship between the football elite and the political fossil fuel elite. We can go to the next one. Here are some figures, which I always forget, but maybe some of you are good in remembering those things. It shows the impact or the part that airline pollution plays in organizing football. And basically, two things account for emissions in football. Two very direct things. One is stadium construction, which is very often used a lot of concrete. So for the Qatar World Cup, but also for the upcoming World Cup in Saudi Arabia, if it happens, that will produce a lot of emissions from stadium construction. And the other cause of emissions in football is flying. And that is the flights for all those fans and teams from all those different cities. And here you see that this year's World Cup has by far most emissions from flying, compared to other tournaments. And that is, of course, if you follow the World Cup, it is in 3 countries. It is in 16 cities. It has 104 matches. So if you're a football fan, a dedicated football fan, you want to follow your team, there's no way to do it without flying. Even if you're really committed, the distance are just too big. And this is a research by partners in our network, the New Weather Institute, Scientists for Global Responsibility, the Cool Down Network, which is the Support for Climate Action Network, and the one about this World Cup is also written by the Environmental Defense Fund. And then we go to UEFA. UEFA organizes European football, and these statistics are for European club football. And they've decided in previous years that we didn't have enough football yet. And I think even football fans might disagree. So they decided to massively increase their competitions, which mean more matches, more flights, more places that teams and fans go to throughout the year, and more teams that play internationally. And this is also sort of a globalization tendency where the only way forward is more and more matches and teams traveling further and further, rather than organizing football in a more local way, and embedding it more in communities. Let's go to the next one. And please tell me if I talk too fast. So what do we do?
Small pauses can never hurt, but I think it's fine.
Thanks. So what do we do? Let's say it's 2 things. We go after the sponsor deals, and we go after all the excessive flying because of all those expanded tournaments. And we do it by drafting reports, going to media, and mobilizing fans and also football players. And I just wanted to highlight 2 airline examples here. So this is maybe 2 years ago already that we wrote a report detailing the dominance of airline sponsors in European club football and saying it was time to ban fossil fuel sponsors from European football. And some media reported on it. This was Euronews. And next to that, it's me a few years ago. And someone had told me that the Dutch national men's team was flying with a private jet from Amsterdam to Paris for a friendly match. And as I knew myself, because I've done that route a few times before, there's an excellent train. one that football teams can very much afford as well. So I went to the private jet airport on my bike because I lived in Paris at the time and tried to offer them a ticket, even first class, for the train. And that led to quite some media attention because media understood that that private jet from Amsterdam to Paris, there was really no good reason for it. So that was a fun action to do that I think made the point quite clearly. We can go to the next. And this is a recent one, mainly done by my colleague Peter, with scientists for global responsibility, and our allies and friends at Stay Grounded. And we together calculated the flights that England is going to take if they reach the World Cup final. Working with English people, they're always very optimistic throughout the tournament. So they're very convinced now they can reach the final. And they together we did research on how much emissions that would cause if they fly around from one side of the continent to the other side of the continent for these matches. So it was good to get that point in the media as well. And I wanted to add with this is a report that comes out tomorrow. So hope you read about it in the media. Otherwise, you can find it at the website of the Cool Down Network. And it's research about the amount, as we call it, sponsored emissions that the World Cup is going to cause. So that works from the concept that companies expect a return on investment from their sponsorship deals. And of course, sponsorship deals are also political, and they're also about buying influence and about normalization, but they're also, for airlines, about getting more people on their planes. So experts did calculations about how much emissions all the polluting sponsors of these tournaments have costs, and it will come out tomorrow. It's an update to a previous report, so I hope you see it in the media and hopefully in social media as well. So very welcome to help amplify that.
Thanks a lot,
And
Frank.
I think that was my last slide. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing this heads up for your publication that will only be published officially tomorrow. And also thanks so much for really giving a very stark picture on how the World Cup is been captured by corporate interests and the political connection to deadly politics, basically. So I think you showed really well how distanced the World Cup has become from a football that is embedded in local communities, and that relates also very well to what Natalia has shared before you. And I think this is also something that connects very well to the work that the Institute for Policy Studies has been doing, because basically it's also the work of challenging how this tournament has become a tournament of inequality, and a tournament that basically is tailored to the private jet class. And so I'm super happy to welcome here with us Chuck Collins. Chuck Collins is the director of the Program of Inequality and also co-founder of the Institute for Policy Studies, Private Jet Accountability Project. And he's also author of many books, for example, Burned by Billionaires, How Concentrated Wealth and Power Are Ruining Our Lives and Planet. And I must admit, I rarely get emotional when I read stuff, but I have read an article by Chuck that actually brought me to tears. So I can really recommend reading his stuff. And welcome, Chuck. You will talk about the studies and tracking you did about private jet emissions around the World Cup.
Thank you, Mira, and thank you, Angel and Natalia and Frank, for setting up. I think that the context here is we're living in a time of extreme, extraordinary inequality. It touches every part of our life. And the billionaires, the ultra wealthy elites are wrecking sports. Sport, which is so essential, playing together, playing street soccer, playing in our neighborhoods, amateur sport is the essence of sport, and yet you can see how the big money has corrupted and commercialized something that's part of our human experience. Um, so I work at the Institute for Policy Studies. We were founded in 1963. We're kind of a left progressive research and organization that supports social movements. We have a sister organization in Amsterdam, the Transnational Institute. Um, our program on inequality looks at these issues of how inequality touches us. And since 2007, we've been tracking the impact primarily of private jets, and how private jets, particularly in the US, do not pay anywhere near their real costs of using the airspace. They clearly don't pay the real costs of their pollution and carbon emissions. And in the United States, there's a powerful private jet lobby, the National Business Aviation Association, that warps the rules, gets subsidies from the government. They've pushed to have secrecy policies, so we can't easily track who's using jets when. Um, so we're up against a powerful lobby. Um, in the United States, well, globally, there's about 3,400 billionaires. Probably most of them have a private jet. Some of them have multiple private jets or they use private jets. In the United States, it's almost 1,000 billionaires. And these big events, like the World Cup, like Davos, like the Kentucky Derby horse race, the Cannes Film Festival. These are like the events of the global elite. They fly in their private jets around. They want to see each other. They want to show off their yachts and their jets. And so they're like migrate. There's like a migration route, and we can track the number of private jets and the effect of those emissions and start to push back and organize. Um, so one of the things I wanted to share we're very excited about is um, we have created a new tracking tool. It will be publicly available after the World Cup, but in the short term, we're using it to track in real time, almost real time, the number of private jets that are going to different matches. And so I'm going to say a little bit about that. The only other thing I'll say about our work is because of the growing concentration of wealth, the rich are buying more jets, but they're also demanding more infrastructure for private jets. And so in many of our communities, and this is similar to Natalia's point, in many of our communities, the wealthy are pushing to expand runways, build new hangars, all to park and travel in private jets. And I live in the northeastern United States. There's a big airport, Hanscom Field, which is the largest private jet airport in the Northeast United States, outside Boston. And they are pushing to expand the number of hangars, triple the number of hangars for private jets. And we are fighting that expansion. And I think we may be able to stop it. And all over the United States, there are similar movements at airports that are expanding private jet capacity, um, to push back. No more longer runways, no more hangars. Most communities are trying to figure out how to reduce their emissions, but the private jet class is lobbying to increase emissions. So that's one of the parts of our work is working in communities to fight back against airport expansions. But I wanted to mention this new tool that we've created, and in the future, you'll be able to find it at the website taxprivatejets.org. Um, and we're working with an artist and a computer programmer named Kyle McDonald, who created a kind of interesting website called the Apocalypse Early Warning System, where, and I recommend looking it up. You can see lots of private jets start to leave an area, it's probably a sign that there's an extreme weather event or some system breakdown. And so Kyle has created this very creative tracking system. So we are enlisting his talent to create a new open source, we call it surveillance. Surveillance, the word surveillance is looking down, but in this case, surveillance, we are surveilling from below, looking up. And it will allow any of you to go on and track the flights from a particular airport on a particular date. We also look at over 5 years what has been the private jet activity in an airport. So we now know that looking back, we can look at the airports where the World Cup games are happening and be able to show how much the World Cup has increased the private jet traffic. So this eventually will be open source, so you'll be able to look, anyone will be able to look and see the private jet activity. Next week, and I'm sorry I don't have any slides or pictures because we're literally just pulling the data this morning. But next week we will release, after the semifinal matches on July 16th, the two semifinal matches in Dallas and Atlanta, we'll be able to release private jet information on the emissions impact of those games. And again, after the final match on July 19th, we will do the same. But here's a couple little sneak preview statistics. The July 6th match between the United States and Belgium, which took place in Seattle, attracted about 818 private jets, 119% increase over the usual 5-year average of flights this time of year in and out of Seattle, emitting 3.5 kilotons of additional emissions over the ordinary emissions. The Spain-Portugal match, which happened in Dallas, attracted 1,939 private jet operations, also emitting an additional 3.6 kilotons of emissions. Down the list, so I could tell you more about the matches, but you get the picture that these are massive polluting events. So we look forward to being able to share that tool with all of you who are tracking and fighting private jets around the world. It's a global tool. We've been analyzing the private jet activity at the Mexican games, and we're very, very excited. And we've worked with Stay Grounded to put forward a petition for the future to ban all private jets from FIFA events and to use this as a sort of campaign and rallying cry. So let me stop there and because it'd be fun to hear your thoughts and discussion. Thank you for including us.
Thanks so much, Chuck. And thanks for giving us a sneak preview into your tracking tool. Really looking forward to also when first the data comes public, but then also to when this tracking tool comes public. And I really also admire and love all the different creative protest actions we've already heard in this webinar from you, this surveillance from below, and from Frank from Fossil Free Football. It was the football fans coming with the football tickets to actually offer an alternative travel route. And from Natalia, we heard about the reclaiming the streets with street soccer as a form of actually blocking the World Cup. So yeah, really very inspiring to hear all of these different forms of resistance. And I also think you pointed out something very interesting in terms of that this World Cup is just one of those mega events that are really showing the concentration of the global elite and inequality. And this is maybe also a good food for thought in terms of like looking forward of where we could go after FIFA. But I also don't want to go too much further because I would like to hand it over to you, Angel, for kicking the debate off, actually.
Muchas gracias, Mira. Muchas gracias, Choc. Estaremos muy atentos a los informes que se vayan generando sobre el impacto de los vuelos privados en este mundial. Muchas gracias a Frank y muchas gracias a Natalia por sus reflexiones. Y queremos abrir a partir de ahora el debate, la reflexión colectiva con todos quienes estamos en este webinario. Y quisiera iniciar con una pregunta para los panelistas, para Natalia, para Chuck y para Frank, sobre cómo miran el futuro a partir de este evento mundialista y qué posibilidades se encuentran de articular las luchas, las resistencias desde estas dimensiones que se han analizado, la dimensión social, que afecta directamente a las comunidades, ahí donde se realiza el Mundial de Fútbol, donde son las sedes mundialistas, y también de esta dimensión corporativa en la cual la expansión aeroportuaria, la aviación juega un papel fundamental y que contribuye de manera muy importante a la crisis climática que afecta pues a toda la humanidad. ¿Cómo es posible generar una sinergia entre estas luchas, entre estas resistencias ante lo que viene? Porque, bueno, el Mundial se acabará, este evento llegará a su fin próximamente, pero toda la huella de despojo, de destrucción, aquí va a quedar. Y bueno, vendrán más adelante otros eventos mundialistas y otros eventos de este tipo que afectarán nuevamente a nuestras comunidades. Entonces dejo abierta esta pregunta, ¿cómo generar esta sinergia entre estas luchas y resistencias? Si quisiera alguno de ustedes comentar, Natalia, Choc o Frank, bueno, abrimos de ahí el debate.
No sé si puedo empezar.
Adelante, Natalia. Sí.
Pues igual, la verdad es que las herramientas que nos acaban de dar creo que son bastante útiles para hacer justo esta sinergia. Desde acá, digamos, como desde la organización popular, social, muchas veces la información que tenemos termina siendo pues información que construimos nosotros, nosotras mismas dentro del territorio, así como estas plataformas de cómo estamos vinculando precisamente pues la trayectoria de los jets privados, la trayectoria también, por ejemplo, en nuestro caso, el flujo del agua, hacia dónde se va. Y creo que esta forma de generar datos desde la sociedad civil, desde la necesidad de la sociedad civil para combatir estas formas de despojo, es algo que genera esta sinergia y estos compromisos. Así lo hemos estado realizando desde diferentes puntos organizativos. La manera en cómo creamos metodologías generadas desde pues, la visión popular nos ha ayudado a conectar precisamente con otras organizaciones para incidir en estos cambios que necesitamos, para visibilizar y evidenciar. Y creo que aquí está un punto clave muy importante, porque cuando igual se democratiza la tecnología, se democratiza el conocimiento, nosotros también nos podemos apropiar más fácilmente del espacio público y de nuestras ciudades. Entonces, creo que de entrada generar este tipo de herramientas nos permite justo generar este debate, esta contranarrativa, para pues ver de qué manera podemos organizarnos. Y también pensar que vivimos en un modo de producción capitalista y este modo de producción capitalista tiene consecuencias muy similares para todas las personas del sur global y para las personas que vivimos justo pues en esta tendencia de extractivismo hacia las grandes élites. Entonces, creo que de entrada la empatía es otra forma de hacer sinergia y de solidaridad, pensando que no estamos aquí para ayudar a otros, sino que somos nosotros mismos los que estamos funcionando en pie de cómo podemos construir un mundo mejor. Entonces, creo que este conversatorio que hemos tenido es prácticamente esta sinergia y esta forma en la que vemos de diferentes formas las consecuencias de este modo de producción capitalista y de estas élites que están organizando el territorio en función de sus grandes capitales.
Muchas gracias, Natalia. Efectivamente, la empatía es muy importante, la información compartida, por lo cual agradecemos mucho la participación de las panelistas que nos permiten y que abren esta información precisamente para generar estas metodologías con la participación de la comunidad, la participación popular, y que pues abren nuevas posibilidades de sinergia y de trabajo colaborativo. Bueno, ¿alguien más tiene alguna pregunta? ¿Alguien quiere participar de los panelistas quizás?
Yeah, I would be happy to go into this question as well, if I can. I think it's an interesting moment in that I think many football fans are seeing two things now. They see football matches that they enjoy, and they see a World Cup organized by a very corrupted, problematic elite that they hate. And they make this distinction very clearly. They've hated FIFA for a long time, and sometimes for good reasons, and sometimes because they see conspiracies. But now they really see that FIFA wants to organize a World Cup really for the elite, for the private jet elite. That is sort of their target audience, and that their closest allies are wannabe autocratic politicians or fully autocratic politicians, and fossil fuel companies, including airlines. And I think people see this, and people have also known for a long time that the impact of a World Cup on local communities is often very negative, although there are always these promises that it will bring development. And I think now that also Infantino is under a lot of pressure because it's a bit like imperial overreach. He thought he could do anything, and now he went into how do you say that? Not applying the red card penalty, which happened before the World Cup with Ronaldo as well, but we sort of ignored that. And now he goes into territory where some football fans who were annoyed before are now outraged. They never liked their behavior, but now they're like, now you come into the territory that we thought was sort of sacred, and that you wouldn't go into. So I think we might really see a lot of activism around FIFA in the coming weeks and months. And I think that's a really good moment to articulate our issues and our demands, so that if there is an opportunity for FIFA to behave better, or if there is maybe new leadership, then that leadership takes our considerations in demand, and that won't be, of course, all our demands. And I think we can also look forward to a World Cup next year in Brazil, and we can already try to connect with communities and people there and the impacts there, which we haven't done that much, but we'll continue protesting the Aramco sponsorship there. And we've seen more women football players speak out than men football players, so we see a lot of opportunities for activism there. And when you look ahead to the next Men's World Cup, I can imagine that this network is quite well connected also in Spain and maybe Portugal. And in Morocco, the youth has already been protesting the total disparity between building 100,000 people seater stadium in Casablanca and not investing in education and hospitals, etc. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of activism that is necessary going forward, but also with FIFA being in a weak position now, maybe we can be a bit more successful if we are getting ever better in connecting the different parts of the struggles that we do.
I would maybe just add, I think there's going to be a huge pushback, not just against FIFA, but there already is against the Olympics and the ways in which all these mega events are affecting places. I was part of an effort to fight the Olympics and keep them from coming to Boston in 2024. And we built a huge coalition because we didn't want our city wrecked by these outside forces, and we didn't want to have to pay. And I think this World Cup, I think a lot of fans are grossed out, feel like it's been sort of almost grotesque. I think more and more people are going to turn their back on these, kind of commercialized sporting events. And, we have to remind people, this is not sports. This is not what sports are. Sports are participatory, local, community. It is fun to have a national team or a county team, but when the billionaires have captured sports, then it turns to corruption and commercialization. So I think more people will start to walk away and embrace local sport and celebrate local community activities. So I can kind of see a global stigma. And I think communities resisting, like Natalia has described in Mexico City, but then national global stigma toward these events. And the work that Frank is doing around, getting players, getting teams, getting communities to push back on the corporate sponsors, the fossil fuel sponsors, is a great case study.
Yeah, I can already see something very powerful coming together here. The resistance of community combined with the rage of football fans and the reach of soccer players. That sounds really like a very, very powerful combination. And at the same time, yeah, I really like how you phrased it, like bringing sports back to the communities and reclaiming sports. So I see there's also already Daniela who has raised her hand. So I actually would now open the floor also for other participants to contribute to the debate. And yeah, let's hand it over to you, Daniela, and see if there's other voices as well.
Thank you. Thanks for all the contributions. And actually, I just wanted to build on what was shared before by Natalia, Frank, and Chuck about how continue to bring these struggles together. And so I'm from Portugal. I live in Germany. I'm from Portugal. So we are already discussing how the World Cup in 2030 will impact. And I think there's a lot of significance to the fact that this will happen in two countries that are over touristified. And there have a lot of social movements that are absolutely at the point, like breaking point, with a housing crisis that is hitting up household salaries, 80% in Lisbon, for instance. And people can really not live anymore in these conditions. And we'll these also territories like Morocco. I mean, Frank already mentioned there were a lot of protests because of the investment in all the World Cup. And I think what is really important is apart from this discussion we're having now, how we socialize this knowledge that communities also gathered and accumulated in Mexico City, opposing for 8 months, as Natalie mentioned, or even longer, and give it forward to the community that will already start fighting the World Cup in Spain and Portugal and Morocco. And I think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, there are also two countries, at least I think Morocco, actually 3 countries that have a very strong football tradition and a lot of fans. And I just want also to say something that we should also not ignore or diminish the soft power that football players have. And I think this is a huge obstacle, but it's also a soft power that we have to take into account to fight back. I mean, footballers like Cristiano Ronaldo, there is a disgusting display of wealth and also being themselves these kind of partners in crime with autocratic governments, very friends with Trump and other Saudi Arabia governments. So I think we also have to take into account, this is also cultural war and against these capitalist mega events that are just ruining everything.
Thanks a lot. And I see there's also Seriane. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Can you add me to the list too, please?
Hey everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi. Yes. Hey, thank you so much for this amazing event. I'm Carrie Ann. I'm with No Olympics LA in Los Angeles. So we've just hosted 8 matches, or we're about to host the last of 8 for the World Cup, and we'll also be hosting the Olympics in 2028, unless we can stop it. It's technically our goal. We realize it's an uphill battle. But I really, really appreciate these conversations because, the Olympics the Olympics are such a large scale event for us that it's actually made the FIFA World Cup games feel small in comparison because the Olympics are so many events in one urban region and so concentrated. But we, over the years, have been connected, just to the previous speaker's point about how to socialize knowledge. We had a good run of learning from folks in Tokyo, which hosted the 2020 Olympics, Paris, which hosted the 2024, Rio in 2016. And, funnily enough, we have the Olympics coming to LA in part because Chuck, you all in Boston were successful in pushing out that bid. So, thanks for that. But we really admire what you all did there, right? Our group wasn't as quick to organize in that bid process. And I think that for us has been a big takeaway. It's we've been working with groups who are trying to defend our communities against the threats of Airbnb, increased gentrification, direct displacement, expanded policing and surveillance. That's been a big one here in LA. But I think we've realized that while we can contribute to building that movement as people who have the Olympics coming, the most strategic moment was that bid phase, right before the city is selected to host. So I think that's just something we'd love to have more of these conversations with literally anyone on this call, the speakers. Thank you so much for sharing. But we're thinking a lot around that, right? Looking at the cities that are preparing bids to host, whether that's for the Olympics or the countries that are preparing bids to host the World Cup, and thinking about what it looks like to build a global movement so that there aren't cities that are willing to bend over because there's sort of that mass protest when the idea comes up. Obviously, that's a big push. We're a long way away from that, but I think that's the kind of way where we might build leverage so that, I don't personally believe the International Olympic Committee or FIFA are possible to reform, but build the kind of leverage to demand change and ideally different kinds of institutions entirely, right? Because as the speakers said before, sport is ours. It should be ours. It shouldn't be controlled and dominated by these very corrupt institutions. So just wanted to weigh in with that emphasis on how we build the kind of ability of people to respond in that bid moment, and thank everyone for this incredible panel.
Thanks so much. And would be super interesting in how this knowledge transfer also happened in like that you shared, that you learned a lot of communities and cities resisting before you, as Daniela also shared, that will be necessary for the World Cup to come. And thanks also for stressing exactly this necessity to build international solidarity. It's also something that was actually at the origins of founding Stay Grounded, because it's the same issue. If you fight an airport locally, then the project might just move elsewhere, and that's why there's neither here nor anywhere. And challenging the trends on the international level is where we can really be powerful. But it's obviously a lot of work. And I know that Steve has put himself on the list, and I also see Frank. And maybe I will already notify our speakers that for the closing words, I would also like to ask you for any calls to action you still want to share. So you can already think about that as well. But handing over to you, Steve. Who's just joining right now. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I missed that. I had to dial back in. Just a few things. Of course, the next World Cup will be in 6 countries. There will be 3 countries in South America, in addition to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, which are massively increasing emissions. At the moment, we're told there'll be 1 game in each country. But if you remember, FIFA originally told us about this World Cup that there would be a knockout round before the groups, and we've ended up with the groups just eliminating 8 teams. So it's possible that people and teams will be flying between South America and Europe. if I can plug Football Against Fascism, got a very useful tool that details all the protests happening, mostly in the US, some in Canada. There was a very good one in Seattle for the Iraq-Egypt game. So all the details of that are on there. I'll put the details of it on the home page for this webinar with the research information that we produced for Stay Grounded about the World Cup. So one area of traction I think we should pursue is players. So during the World Club Cup in North America, mostly US last year, we got very, very close for the International Football Federation, which is the Worldwide Players Union, to actually calling a strike, or for some of their players to go on strike. In fact, there were some national federations of players' unions who are actually pushing for a strike because of the extra games, the health impacts from dangerous weather at the time of year it was held, and from all the flying that was necessary between venues. So I think that's a good area of traction. Unfortunately, we didn't really think it was a good idea, Stay Grounded, to make contact with a brilliant Norwegian player who's probably the greenest footballer you'll ever find. But I think people like that, we need to get on side and they can really help us and show us ways in. One quick point on the emissions. I noticed there's several people have done emissions since the Scientists for Global Responsibility report came out last year, in November, I think, of what teams will build up whilst they're travelling between venues. But quite a few of them seem to have missed, just tracked the flights to games from one venue to the next, rather than base camps. Most of the teams have got base camps. So in other words, instead of A to B to C to D, they're going A to B to A to C to A, if you're still with me. So it almost doubles the emissions in some cases. Because it's not just football, we've now got a new Nations Championship in rugby between Southern and Northern Hemisphere teams, which is going to be running from now till the autumn. Which is massively increasing the flights as there's home and away games for each fixture. And the Olympics, another way we could find our way is for things like massive events like European Championships. I'm not so sure about CONCACAF or South American ones, the Olympics and the World Cup. There's an act of Parliament or legislation that goes through the House of Commons or House of Representatives or wherever it is, that give really stringent extra powers to the state. So when the Olympics was in London, which obviously was some time ago now, in 2012, some of the restrictions on protest in particular were, well, made the recent ones look okay. They were incredibly draconian. For example, as we've detailed in the research that's on the site, in East London, where the Olympics were held when they were in London, people were denied access to their streets and their flats because there were anti-aircraft guns that were placed on top of their flats. So the whole area was controlled by, not just by the state, but by the army, and that's in London. So when you're, so when we contacted loads of MPs at the time, and pretty much none of them had read the entire legislation. They thought, oh yes, it would be great if the World Cup comes here or the Olympics come here or bring extra business, there'll be extra jobs. The jobs never materialised, by the way, like most things. So they didn't actually read the detail, and in particular the powers that the state captured. So some of those powers that were captured by the state in the UK in 2012 are still with us. They weren't repealed when the act is for 3 months. And after that 3 months expires, then there's a vote on whether to repeal the powers in it or not. More than half of those powers were kept by the state. And that was the basis for the repression against activism and protest that we're seeing in the UK now. So I think there are lots of different ways in. Obviously, private jets is a big flag waver, and I look forward to that data coming out immensely. That should be very good. It's just I was astonished by the number of jets that went to what were, to be honest, fairly minor games.
Okay,
so anyway,
thank you.
Me.
Just to make sure that we still have also time for closing words and calls to action from our speakers. But yeah, thanks for also pointing out the Organization of Football Against Fascism and sources, and the potential of strikes of players as another sort of strategy that connects also to the soft power that should be, and the power that football players have in society that was already mentioned beforehand. So maybe, Frank, I already saw your hand up twice. Would you like to start us off?
Yeah, just a few things to react to, and like really excellent interventions. I wrote down that for those in LA, it would be nice to get you connected to the Cool Down Network for Sports and Climate Action, where I'm also participating in. We're now thinking about what they could do around LA. So we're also in touch with someone local, but it's mostly an international network. But it would be great to link up. So the Cool Down Sports for Climate Action Network. Then on players, the Norwegian that was mentioned, which is Morten Thorsby. He's part of the Norwegian national team for this World Cup, and we got him behind the scenes to sign a call to FIFA to update its heat policy, which experts and the Football Union FIFPro say it's not adequate, and also align on dropping polluting sponsors. So we got to mobilize him just before the World Cup. I'm really happy he signed up. He's outspoken, but he's also careful in navigating the world he functions in. And as a Norwegians have difficult relationships to oil, but that's for an entirely different discussion. But as coming from an oil state, that creates some extra difficulties. On the flights, you mentioned that a lot of the examples were from stadium to stadium rather than going through the base camp. And we also noticed that we have an overview on our website, which is now a little outdated because it was just for the group phase. But we also noticed that many calculations in the media seem to assume that you wouldn't stop by your base camp, which makes sense for fans, but not for team travel. So yeah, those were just a few of my reactions to what was said. It was really great to be here, and thank you so much for organizing. And I think we have a lot of work going forward.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Is there any shout out in terms of things to watch other than your upcoming publication tomorrow? That will obviously be something to watch out for and share, I guess.
Oh yeah, you can of course follow us on social media platforms that of course shouldn't be exist or totally reformed, but we're still on there apart from X. But also on the more progressive Blue Sky. There is protest in LA tomorrow that we just heard about that might be interesting and that we hope to get in the media, which are organized. I think it's called sorry, I'm doing this a little. It's the no, I don't know the name. I have it somewhere here. But a youth climate action group that has a lot of protest experience and it now goes after the big sponsors of FIFA. So that is going to be interesting. And maybe in terms of activism for after this World Cup, like for the Women's World Cup, a lot of female players have spoken out against the sponsor deal with Saudi oil company Aramco, and a lot of them will be expected to play, or we can expect them to qualify for next year's World Cup. So we hope to see a lot more activism from those players, and we'll also try to support them from behind the scenes.
Thanks so much. Natalia, Chuck, who would like to go next with closing words?
Ok, bueno, me permito empezar, pues la verdad, muchísimas gracias por este espacio, ha sido bastante enriquecedor. Nos pueden seguir, por ejemplo, en Instagram, es antifa.antififa, la cuenta. Es una cuenta dedicada justo a pues estar exponiendo lo que estamos haciendo sobre el tema del Mundial y de defensa del territorio. Y nosotros queremos hacer una contraclausura el día 19 de julio, que es la clausura del Mundial, reivindicando nuevamente pues, nuestras protestas en torno a la defensa del territorio frente a lo que significa la FIFA. Haremos algo que le llamamos el antimural, que la Ciudad de México mandó a hacer murales por el Mundial, nosotros hicimos los antimurales y estaremos exponiendo pues esta contranarrativa gráfica, como esta forma de defensa también desde lo visual y desde pues el llamado a la acción para los territorios, de que puedan ir generando pues estas contranarrativas para hacer más fuertes los movimientos en torno a lo que significa el despojo. Sería, digamos, nuestras acciones de esta semana que queda del Mundial.
Thanks so much. So be prepared to share and spread on the 19th. And handing on to you, Chuck.
Yeah, I don't have much to add except watch the taxprivatejets.org website and stay grounded, and IPS together have a petition around banning private jets at FIFA that we want to circulate and get more people engaged. There's a lot of engagement already. So those are two things. And if you're in the United States, check out our work to tax private jets, make the, tax private jet fuel, eliminate some of the tax breaks that Trump has given to the private jet industry. So those are a couple of action items.
Thanks so much. Then I'll hand it over to you, Angel, also for some closing words.
Pues quiero agradecer a todas las personas que participaron en este webinario, especialmente a Chuck, a Frank y a Natalia, por compartirnos su palabra y todo el trabajo tan importante y que inspira a articular la lucha, la resistencia, el trabajo por la vida que se está realizando y que es urgente, ¿no? En este mundo en el que estamos viviendo problemáticas globales que requieren una articulación y requieren acciones de todos quienes estamos en los diferentes territorios impactados, en este caso por el Mundial de la FIFA, y que pues requieren acciones desde lo local hasta lo global. Y creo que su compartición, su palabra, toda la información que aquí nos han compartido, pues es muy importante para los siguientes pasos. Les invito a estar atentos, atentas a las siguientes acciones, tanto de permanecer en la tierra como pues de los colectivos, las colectivas que participan con nosotros. Y bueno, pues agradecerles mucho y agradecer, Mira, por toda la organización de este webinario.
Yeah, I can only wholeheartedly stress that and just add one more call to action, that there's also a communication pack for the petition to ban private jets out of the World Cup. And I also leave you my contact in case you want to be exchanging more with Stay Grounded in the future. Would love to be connected. And I will now say goodbye to everybody who joined us on the live stream and in the recording, and stop this now.